Good morning, scholars, or good evening, whenever you're getting ready to do your lesson for today. I know some of you are really busy, so you may not do it in the morning, and that's okay. So whatever time of day it is, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I hope you are well. And we're going to do something a little different today for our lesson. We still have a read aloud to do, but before we do that, I want to do a fun little game, okay? Um, so before we do that, just remember, so far we've learned about 3 former United States presidents, right, in this domain, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and this is how our game is gonna work, okay? I'm going to say a statement, okay, about one of these great men that we've learned about. So we've learned about so far George Washington, right? Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. So Mrs. G is going to read a statement and you are going to tell whoever you're with, or maybe you're doing this on your own and that's okay, you can say it out loud. You're going to tell out loud who that statement is about, okay? So, we're gonna go ahead and we'll start and Mrs. G will explain to you how it goes, okay? All right, so the first statement, okay, so Mrs. G, this is what I will do after every statement I read. I'm going to hold up this paper, okay, and it says, number 1 is George Washington, and if you see Mrs. G drew glasses, okay, to give you a little hint, because you remember the spectacles, he needed the glasses because he was getting a little older and it was hard to see. So Mrs. G gave you a little hint. So number 1 is George Washington, okay? Number 2 is Thomas Jefferson, and Mrs. G drew a pen and the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so you can remember that, right? Because Thomas Jefferson wrote that. So number 1 is George Washington. Number 2 is Thomas Jefferson. And number 3, who do you think number 3 might be? Who hid something under his hat? Abraham Lincoln, okay? So I'm going to hold this up to you after every statement I say, and you're going to choose who that statement applies to, okay? So our first statement, okay, listen carefully so you can know who it is, okay? This president was admired for his honesty and has a cherry tree legend about him, okay? Which one was it? Mrs. G will say it again. This president was admired for his honesty and has a cherry tree legend about him. Was it George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? Did you say George Washington? Good job. It was George Washington. Yeah, remember George Washington and the cherry tree? He cut it down. He felt really bad about it, but he was honest and he told his father about it, right? All right, here's our next statement. Are you ready? Let's see if you can get it. These 2 presidents were 2 of the founding fathers who helped create the United States of America. So you're going to pick 2. These 2 presidents were 2 of the founding fathers who helped create the United States of America. So which 2? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? Did you say George Washington and Thomas Jefferson? Good job, good job, good job. All right, here's our next statement. Ready? This man had a talent for writing and wrote the Declaration of Independence, a statement saying that the colonists were free from England and had the right to live, to be free, and to be happy. Who had the talent of writing? Was it George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? Did you say Thomas Jefferson? You are right. Good job. All right, here we go. Here's the next one. This general fought England for American independence during the American Revolution. Okay, I'll say it again. This general fought England for American independence during the American Revolution. Was it George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? Did you say George Washington? George Washington is right. Good job. All right, ready for our next one? All right. This man became the first president of the United States. Who was the first president of the United States? Was it George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? Did you say George Washington? You are correct. Good job. You guys have been listening. I know you have been. You're working so hard. Okay, here we go. Ready for the next one? All right. This man became the third president of the United States. The third president of the United States. Was it George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? Did you say Thomas Jefferson? Good job. Good job. It was Thomas Jefferson. He was the third president of the United States. Okay, our last statement, okay? It says, this man known as Honest Abe was president during the United States Civil War and hid a paper under his hat that said all slaves were set free. Was it George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? Which man is known as Honest Abe and hid a paper under his hat that said all slaves were free? Did you say Abraham Lincoln? Good job. My goodness, you guys did so good. All right, perfect. Well, that was fun. That was different, right? All right. So as you know, I'm going to start a read aloud, but before we start a read aloud, I want to ask you a question to keep your brain thinking while Mrs. G is reading, okay? I want to know if you know what is a hero. When you think of the word hero, okay, what is a hero, okay? And I'll let you think about that, okay? But heroes are people that you admire, respect, and look up to, okay? Maybe because they have done some great things in their lives, okay? Maybe you look up to that person because they're just, I don't know, maybe they're so giving and they're so kind and you want to be like them, or you want to do great things. And so maybe they're your hero, okay? So today you'll be listening to a story about another one of the past presidents of the United States, and his name is President Theodore Roosevelt. Say that with Mrs. G. President Theodore Roosevelt, okay? And in this read aloud, you are going to hear about one of President Roosevelt's heroes. You're going to learn about who his hero was, okay? And I want you to especially to listen carefully for the struggles, okay? The struggles that Roosevelt had as a child and how he overcame them as he became an adult, okay? So listen to the struggles that Theodore Roosevelt had when he was a child and how he overcame them as he became an adult, okay? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Let Mrs. G go ahead and share the screen with you, and we will go ahead and get started. Let me move this out of the way. Okay. All right. This is Theodore Roosevelt, okay, right here, all right? And we're gonna learn about him today. Everybody gets scared sometimes, but we can learn what to do about it. Today, we are going to hear a true story about someone who decided that he would never let being scared stop him from doing what was right. This is a story about young Teddy Roosevelt. His mother called him Theodore when she introduced him to her friends. His own friends called him TR for short. His father called him Teddy when saying something he especially wanted his son to remember. Teddy, he might say, there is nothing more important than a good education. And Teddy Roosevelt would listen. Teddy always listened to what his father said. An education is what someone has learned, okay? One day when Teddy was 6 years old, he and his younger brother Elliot were visiting their grandparents in New York City, where all the Roosevelt family lived. Teddy's friend, Edith Caro, was with them, but the children were not playing as they usually did. They stood by a window with Mr. Roosevelt, Teddy's father, and watched a train slowly moving by, not far from the house. Mr. Roosevelt said, "Inside that train is Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States. President Lincoln died, and that train is taking him back to his home for his funeral." So when you hear funeral, what that means is that a funeral is when people gather to honor someone who had passed away, who died. Okay, and that's what they were doing. Okay, they were taking Abraham Lincoln back to his home so that people can honor him. Okay. Teddy asked, "Why is the train moving so slowly, Father?" A lot of people loved Abraham Lincoln, Teddy, and thought he was a very good man. People were sorry that he died. They want Lincoln's family to know this, and they are gathering along the train tracks to show how much they will miss him. So people are gathering out of respect for Abraham Lincoln. Okay, they want to say goodbye. They want to say their final goodbyes and their respects to him because he was such a good man, and a lot of people looked up to him. They admired him. Okay. Teddy thought about this. "Do you think President Lincoln was a good man, Father?" Teddy greatly admired his father, so he wanted to know how his father felt about the president. Mr. Roosevelt replied, "I think Abraham Lincoln was a great man, Teddy, and a great president. A great president can help a lot of people and do a lot of good things. Abraham Lincoln came from a poor family, but he worked hard. He was smart and kind, and so many people liked him that he was elected president." Okay, so does it sound like Mr. Roosevelt admired President Lincoln? Kind of does, right? He sounds like he really admired him. He looked up to him. He liked him. Okay. "Always remember, Teddy, you should judge a man not by the kind of clothes he wears or whether he lives in a fancy part of town, but by what he tries to do and why." So when he said, "Teddy, you should judge," okay, that means form an opinion, okay? So an opinion about somebody, okay? So he's saying you shouldn't have an opinion about somebody by the clothes that he wears or how much money that they have, okay? He says, "but by what he tries to do and why. Why, some of the best people I have known hardly had 2 pennies to rub together." Okay, what do you think that means when he says they hardly had 2 pennies to rub together? Okay, Teddy's father is just saying that some of the best people he has known have been poor. So just because you have a lot of money doesn't make you better than somebody, okay? You can be the most amazing, kindest, loving, giving person, and you can be poor, okay? And that's what that means, okay? But Teddy Roosevelt rarely got out to meet different kinds of people in different parts of town. Mostly he stayed quietly at home because he had medical problems that made it hard for him to breathe. His mother worried that if he tried to be too active, he might get sick and die. So you can see his mother right here, right? You notice how she's peeking in because she's worried about him because he had some health problems, okay, that he couldn't breathe sometimes. So she's just peeking in, worried about him, okay? His father thought differently. "Teddy," he said, "only you can decide how you will live. I suggest you build up your body instead of being afraid to push it too hard. Look fear in the eye and tell it, 'I will not let you beat me. I will not just sit and watch while other people do all the important and exciting things. I will truly live my life.'" Okay, so that's what his dad told him. Instead of constantly worrying about himself, he said, "Go live your life. Go do the things that people are doing." Okay? Teddy listened. Through years of long, hard effort, he turned himself into someone who was all action. He built up his body by lifting weights, which is exercising, right? You lift weights, becoming a strong swimmer, and learning to wrestle and box. He spent more and more time outdoors, climbing high mountains, hiking for miles and miles, and fishing and hunting. Okay, so he followed his father's advice. Okay, he was doing all the things that other people did. Okay, Teddy built up his mind too. His love for the outdoors led him to learn all about wild animals, birds, and fish. He became such an expert. Okay, an expert is someone who knows a lot about a subject. Okay, That famous scientist said, young Roosevelt knows as much as we do about this kind of animal or that kind of bird. Teddy went to college and received the fine education his father had talked about, and all his life he gave his mind as much exercise as he gave his body. He wrote more than 20 books and many articles for newspapers and magazines. Teddy's father was his hero, so Teddy remembered the things his father taught him. He never forgot what his father had taught him that day when President Lincoln went by. Okay, so who was Teddy's hero? His father was his hero, right? Okay. 2 months after he finished college, Teddy married a young woman named Alice Lee. He studied to become a lawyer and wrote a book about the U.S. Navy, which Navy officers agreed was the best book on the subject. Then he started to work in the government of the state of New York, always doing a dozen projects at once. He did all of them well. 4 years after Theodore and Alice married, Alice gave birth to a baby girl whom they also named Alice. Theodore had never been so happy. He loved his wife, a new daughter, and was now one of the New York government leaders, doing work he knew was helping people. Only 2 days after little Alice was born, however, Theodore's lovely young wife became very sick and she passed away and she died. That's sad, huh? Heartbroken, Teddy asked his older sister Anna to take care for the new baby. Then he left New York and traveled to South Dakota, a land of wide open prairies. So back then, far west of New York, there was much open land and many cowboys, okay? He bought a cattle ranch, working alongside the cowboys he hired to move herds of cattle, trying to stay too busy to think about his sadness. There he began to feel healthy again. He wrote, "My ranch house stands on the river brink. From the low, long veranda, shaded by leafy trees, one looks across to grassy meadowland, behind which rises a line of steep cliffs. This is a pleasant place. In summer evenings, when a cool breeze stirs along the river and blows in the faces of the tired men who lean back in their rocking chairs. What true American does not enjoy a rocking chair, books in hand, gazing sleepily out at the hills in the afterglow of sunset?" So he was peaceful. He felt peace, okay? And that's what he wrote about. However, Teddy did not look quite like other cowboys. He wore glasses, and his cowboy outfit had been made for him by a clothing designer back east. He also served as a deputy sheriff, a special kind of policeman, while living in the West. Once he chased 3 outlaws, meaning people who broke the law. That's what outlaws are, okay? Once he chased 3 outlaws for days before catching and arresting them. Teddy loved the West, but little Alice was in the East. He missed his daughter so much, at last, so he went home. He decided, my father was right. If such a terrible thing as losing my wife can happen with no warning, I must use every day I have in this world to do important things. He started working in government again so he could help people. Theodore Roosevelt did not know it then, but he himself would one day become President of the United States. Wow, so he had overcome a lot of things. When he was younger, he had lots of medical problems. He couldn't breathe, right? And so, but he didn't let that stop him from doing all of these amazing things. And look where it got him. He would become President of the United States one day. That's pretty cool, right? I think so. So here's what I want you to do, okay? We're gonna go ahead. We're not gonna do a think, pair, share today, but Mrs. G is gonna go ahead and give you some vocabulary. There's some new words that might sound new to you, that you're not quite sure, and I wanna make sure you understand what those are, okay? So the word judge, can you say that with me? Judge. And that means to form an opinion about a person or situation. To form an opinion about a person or a situation. So an example would be, you should not judge a person by his or her looks. You should just get to know the person, right? You might have heard maybe the saying, You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, meaning you shouldn't judge somebody on the outside, what they look like on the outside. You should get to know them what's on the inside, right? Get to know the person before you make an opinion about somebody. And that's what that means, okay? And this word is expert. Everybody say that with me. Expert. Someone who knows a lot about a subject. So maybe you really love sloths. I know a person in Mrs. G's class. I know a scholar in Mrs. G's class that loves sloths. And Mrs. G likes sloths too. And he is an expert in sloths. He knows a lot of information about sloths. And that's what that means, okay? So someone who knows a lot about a subject, okay? And maybe you're an expert in cars, or maybe you're an expert in books. Maybe you know a lot about books, okay? So that's what that means. And our last word is education. Say education. All right. And an education just means what someone has learned. So you are getting an education right now. You are in kindergarten, you are learning every day and working so hard. You are getting an education, okay? And that's what that is. Your assignment for this lesson is you have 3 things to do, okay? 3 things to do. The first thing you are going to do is you are going to draw a picture of your hero. Remember, we talked about what a hero is. We talked about a hero is somebody you admire, somebody you look up to because of how they live their life. Who is your hero? And you're going to draw a picture of that person, okay? It could be anybody that you want, someone that you really love and admire and you look up to them, okay? Make sure you put on there who it is, though. So you're going to draw your picture of your person, that's your hero, and you're going to write, maybe it's mom, maybe it's dad, maybe it's your teacher, and you're going to write the name of the person so we know who your hero is, okay? And your second thing you're going to do is you're going to tell me, you're going to write down who was Teddy Roosevelt's hero. And you're just going to write the name of that person on a piece of paper. Who was Teddy Roosevelt's hero? Okay? And the last thing you are going to do is you are going to draw one picture, okay, of something that Teddy Roosevelt did outdoors, okay? He overcame some health issues and he said he was going to live life. Well, what kinds of things did he do, okay, to live life, to be happy and to not just sit home and sit there? He went outside and he did lots of cool things. Draw one picture of something that he did. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Okay, so I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and this ends our president's domain. We are done with presidents. Our next domain is continents. Okay, so we're going to learn all about different continents that we have. You're going to learn where they're located, some of their culture on the continents, and some facts. So it's going to be really, really fun. Ms. G will show you some pictures. So that's what we have planned for next week. Okay. It also ties in with Mr. Parks' Wit and Wisdom lesson too. So you're gonna hear some familiar things. So you might hear something that Mr. Parks says that you're like, oh yeah, Mrs. G was talking about that. Or the other way around. You might hear something that Mrs. G says that Mr. Parks says, okay? And you're gonna say, oh yeah, I remember that, okay? All right, that's it for today. Have a wonderful, safe weekend, and Mrs. G will talk to you Monday.